about addiction, and we've been talking about it as a society for years now. And this problem, I mean, addiction is nothing new to society, but in the most recent years, it's really escalated with the opioid epidemic, the number of overdoses that we have seen in our streets, and within our families. And I think we all know that addiction does not discriminate against anyone. Whether it be rich, poor, white, black, brown, and yellow, straight, gay, Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, whatever it is, it does not discriminate. And this whole epidemic has brought the idea of treatment and proper treatment to the limelight. No longer are addicts just hidden in the closet. I'm an Irish Catholic, I'm great at this. You keep all your problems inside, you never talk about them. So that whole culture is gone. Now it's in front of us. And the world of corrections has really come to a crossroads where, corrections can be old school. It's law enforcement. The theory used to be lock them up and throw away the key. Now the new theory is, how do we make it better? When someone enters our jail, no pun intended, we have a captive audience. So what can we do with them while they're here? The end goal, when we release them, they go back to the community, they don't come back here. So whatever we have going on while they're here, whether it's programs, treatment, medication, we're here for the purpose of getting the individual back out of here. And when we see them leave, when we say goodbye to them, we say it tongue-in-cheek, please don't come back. We never want to see you again. Once we see you within our community, you're united with family, back with your job, back in society as a productive member. So that's what we're doing. So go back a couple of years ago, those in the legislature and obviously the governor's office put together the criminal justice reform package that came out, started in 2018. Part of that was the pilot program for the medication-assisted treatment pilot program as part of the CARE Act. 7 counties in Massachusetts joined on this thing, and it was to bring in medication-assisted treatment into our jails. A lot of us, including here in Essex County, we're already doing Vivitrol, and now we're going to expand it and bring in methadone and buprenorphine, more commonly the Subutex category, into our jails. Now keep in mind, jails, we've been trying to keep this stuff out for decades. Especially Suboxone. Suboxone, Subutex, same family, but that was the #1 drug that was constantly being smuggled into our jails. And the correctional staff in this room will tell you that's what we've been trying to keep out. Now we're giving it to the inmates. Talk about a culture change. Talk about a paradigm shift. This is something that's really, we had to sell to the correctional officers, actually sell it to ourselves. And Massachusetts, I got to tell you, has been leading the way in this process. There are a handful of correctional facilities across the country, not many, that were doing it, but I don't think none of them was doing it to the extent that Massachusetts is doing it now. Collectively, we have embraced it with our partners, and that's an important word, is partnerships. This isn't something we just do individually here in corrections. As I mentioned before, this started with the legislature. It actually probably started before the legislature because there was feedback or input into those individuals to bring this into the forefront. Health and Human Services, Department of Public Health, societal groups, medical staff, everybody's coming together to actually bring this to a head. We're very, very grateful to individuals and the organizations. Personally, I'm very grateful to the staff here at the Essex County Sheriff's Department. They really, when I asked them to take on this challenge, they did it with their eyes open, their arms open, and they embraced it, and they made it successful. But we couldn't do it alone. We had to have, again, DPH, Bureau of Substance Abuse Services, the Drug Control Program, our friends from the Drug Enforcement Administration, who actually regulate these methadone clinics throughout the country. And we've had a hell of an education learning what DEA regulations and specifications are to open a methadone clinic here within a correctional institution. Groundbreaking. And as we move forward, we're getting a lot of calls from correctional institutions across the country saying, how did you do this? Number one, why are you doing this? And what are the effects? So when we talk about the pilot program, and that's what we're doing, we're collecting a lot of data. Because this is new and this is groundbreaking, we want to make sure we're getting it right. So we're going to collect as much data as we can. We're going to analyze that collectively with not only our partner sheriffs and the agencies I mentioned, but we bring in some real analysts who know how to do this and do it right. So if we're not doing it right, we're going to tweak it to make sure we're doing it better. And again, the goal is, at the end of the day, to give the proper treatment into the individuals. So that's where we're headed. Logistically wise, the dispensary is actually next door on the other side of that wall. That was a print shop a little over a year ago. We had a pretty progressive program that we use with the inmates, teaching them how to print. We moved that print shop up to our pre-release center up at the Lawrence pre-release center, better known as the Farm. So we had a nice room over there. And we brought in our partners from WellPath, Acadia, DPH, the architects, and I got to be honest with you, the program of the project blossomed, sometimes not in a good way, but we had to learn a lot and you know, spend a lot of money on it, but it was for the right thing. Because when I say spend a lot of money, you can't put a dollar on human life. And a lot of you know, you've heard this statistic before, but when people leave the jail, they're at 120 times greater chance of overdosing and probably dying than John Q. Public, who's out there now with an addiction. And the simple reason is, when the folks come to jail, they're used to taking a certain amount of heroin or fentanyl or whatever their drug of choice is, and they're in here and they're not taking the drug anymore. They're not supposed to be. And then when they leave, they go back to the usual dosage. They can't handle it, and that's gone. So that's why I say we spend some money, but it's all for a good cause. So state reps, remember that when I'm asking for more money next year. So what we're doing, this started September 1st. I said before, 2018, the CARE Act came out, proposed a pilot program, took us a year, working very close with our partners, and we put together the program. We kicked off September 1st. We have a medical housing unit in the building next door. That's where we were doing it. Very tight space. We got through it. We made it work. This is what we really needed to do, and this is what we waited for. So September 1st, we started maintenance. Maintenance means if an inmate showed up here on day one, was going through our intake process, if they had a confirmed prescription for our methadone or the buprenorphine family, we would respect that, and we would maintain them on that medication. That was not done before. We would shut them off, and then they would come in and they would detox, dry out, and move on. So we started that September 1, and part 2 of this was the law calls for 30 days prior to release for sentenced inmates. We're to induce them on either methadone or Suboxone or Subutex and get them on that dosage, so again, when they leave, they don't overdose. So, new ground, we had a few bumps in the road, we had great partners, as I keep saying, but we worked together and we got it rolling.